So think about maybe the last thing you ordered online, or that package that just sort of shows up like way faster than you expected.
Right.
Chances are the story behind that item, it connects back pretty strongly to the person we're really digging into today, Jeff Bezos.
Mm-hmm.
We've pulled together, well, quite a bit of stuff, sources, looking at his whole journey, really, from his early days, the very start of Amazon,
The
obviously.
garage days.
Exactly. All the way to Blue Origin, space, and, the kind of core ideas that drove him.
His leadership principles. Yeah.
So the mission for this deep dive, basically, is to pull out the most interesting bits, the key insights, maybe some surprising stuff from these sources, to try and understand how one guy, seemingly just super curious, could end up having such a massive global impact.
Consider it the shortcut, right? Getting the essence of the Bezos story without reading everything yourself.
Exactly. Your shortcut. Okay, so where do we start? The beginning, I guess.
Makes sense. And what jumps out right away from the sources is this constant drive to figure things out, to build things, even from the very beginning.
Born 1964, Albuquerque. Young mom, Jackie, only 17.
Right, and his biological parents separated early on. His dad, Ted Jorgensen, had a bike shop, but then his mom remarried Miguel Bezos.
A Cuban immigrant, an engineer, and he adopted Jeff, gave him his name.
And that seems really significant. The family moved to Houston, Miguel worked as an engineer, and the household, well, it sounds like education was a big deal. Lots of books, lots of ideas encouraged. A supportive environment, but maybe also one that fostered some self-reliance given the early changes.
Yeah, you see that mix. And it wasn't just
Yeah.
book smarts, right? There's that famous story, him taking apart his crib with a screwdriver,
Oh,
like
yeah.
as a toddler.
Huh. Yeah, apparently he wanted to sleep in a real bed. It's maybe a bit anecdotal, but it points to that early desire to, engineer his own reality, a problem solver from day one, almost literally.
Not just taking things apart, but trying to make them work differently. Better for him.
Exactly. And you see that hands-on thing continuing. The sources talk a lot about the summers he spent on his grandfather's ranch in Texas. Pop, they called him.
Pop had worked for a space agency, right? Like DARPA or something.
Yeah, former Atomic Energy Commission, involved in space technology. So on the ranch, Jeff wasn't just, relaxing. He was learning practical skills. Fixing windmills, looking after animals.
Real self-sufficiency stuff.
Totally. Independent thinking, perseverance. It's this interesting combination in the tech influence from Miguel, the sort of rugged, figure it out mentality from Pop on the Ranch. Both seemed crucial.
And it wasn't just tinkering for himself. He started something called the Dream Institute.
As a teenager, yeah. A summer camp for younger kids. He was teaching them science, literature.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's ambitious for a kid. Already leading, already sharing knowledge. Those big dreams the sources mention, you can see them starting early.
It definitely hints at the entrepreneurial spirit to come, taking initiative, thinking bigger. And in high school, it continues. A teacher apparently noted he planned to make his mark.
And the space obsession was already there. His graduation speech about needing space colonies because Earth's resources are limited.
I mean, that's pretty heavy stuff for a high school valedictory speech. It shows that long-term, almost sci-fi thinking was ingrained early on. That fascination with space is a thread that runs through his entire life, obviously.
You can really see the seeds being planted.
Yeah.
So off to Princeton. Electrical engineering and computer science. Not exactly an easy path.
No, definitely not. The sources paint him as very serious, super focused, intense even. He wasn't just there to get a degree. He saw computers as the key, the tool to build the future he was imagining.
So choosing that technical field, it was deliberate. a means to an end.
I think so, yeah. It seems he understood that to really build these big ideas, whether it was online businesses or space stuff, he needed that deep technical grounding. It gave him the toolkit.
It's interesting, though, the sources say he wasn't necessarily like top of the class in grades, but his energy, his ambition that stood out, people felt he was going somewhere.
Right. Which suggests that drive, that internal compass, might have been even more important than just pure academics. Princeton honed the skills, but the ambition was already firing on all cylinders.
Okay, so Princeton grad, electrical engineering, computer science background, ready for the tech world, lots of hard work, late nights, sounds about right.
Yeah, aiming to master the future, as one source put it, deep focus. But they also mention, like, a giant laugh.
Huh, good to know. Humanizes him a bit.
Definitely. And even then, during those intense studies, he was apparently thinking about things like space hotels, computers everywhere, ideas that probably sounded pretty crazy back then.
That willingness to entertain the seemingly impossible.
Exactly, a key trait. So after graduating in '86, he doesn't jump straight into his own thing. He gets experience first.
No.
Fattel, a fintech startup, then Bankers Trust.
And then D.E. Shaw, the hedge fund in New York. That seems like a big step.
It was, and he rose incredibly fast there. Became one of their youngest VPs. He was working on complex computer systems for investments. His boss, David Shaw, apparently saw something special in him.
A big validation, getting recognized like that.
For sure. But even with that success, the sources say he started feeling restless. Something wasn't quite clicking for the long term. And then comes the early 90s.
And the internet explosion.
Bingo. Growing at, over 2,000% a year? Just astronomical numbers. And that's when the idea really sparks.
The online bookstore.
Yeah. Why books? Well, he saw them as the perfect product to start with online. Huge variety possible, relatively easy to ship compared to other goods. He wasn't just thinking bookstore. He was envisioning the biggest bookstore in the world, accessible to anyone.
That scale of thinking is incredible for the time. And he actually made a list, right? Like 20 potential internet businesses.
Yep, methodically listed them out, and the online bookstore kept coming out on top.
So he talks to his boss, David Shaw.
Right. And Shaw, while supportive of the ambition, apparently told him it sounded like a good idea for someone who didn't already have a great job. He cautioned him about the risk.
Understandable advice, which leads to the walk in the park.
The famous Central Park walk with his wife, Mackenzie,
Yeah.
and the invention of the regret minimization framework.
Explain that again. It's such a core Bezos concept.
Basically, he projected himself forward to age 80 and asked, will I regret not trying this? Not will I regret failing, but will I regret never even taking the shot?
And the answer for the Wall Street job versus the internet bookstore was clear.
Yeah. He figured he wouldn't regret living Wall Street, but he would deeply regret missing out on the internet revolution, even if the bookstore failed. That framework, looking long-term to minimize future regret, that sealed the decision.
It's such a powerful way to frame big choices. It really cuts through the short-term fear.
Absolutely. It shifts the focus. So, 1994, they quit their jobs, pack up the car,
And drive cross-country to Seattle. Mackenzie driving while Jeff is tapping out the business plan on a laptop.
Pretty much. Legend has it that way anyway. Seattle made sense, growing tech hub, Microsoft was there.
That's an Amazon.
Ha! No. Initially, it was Cadabra, as in abracadabra,
Okay.
until someone pointed out that on the phone, it sounded a lot like cadaver.
Right. Not ideal for a business name.
Definitely not. So they brainstormed again, landed on Amazon, the world's biggest river, to convey scale, vastness, very intentional symbolism.
And then the classic startup scene.
Yeah.
Setting up in a garage in Seattle.
Yep. using old doors for desks to save money. Famously, they had a bell rigged up to ring every time an order came in.
Which probably didn't ring much at first.
Pretty slowly at the start, yeah. But then gradually, more and more frequently, a real-time indicator of growth. And Jeff was doing everything: coding, packing boxes, customer service, long, long hours.
So it's a garage, a big idea, and this powerful belief in what the internet could become. Not just information, but commerce.
Exactly. Summer 94, he's 30, walking away from a top Wall Street job for this. This gamble on the internet's potential. Incredible conviction.
And writing the plan on the drive out to Seattle, it just shows that relentless focus.
And Seattle, as you said, was smart. Microsoft's presence meant talent. Engineers were there.
Right. So the garage office, no heat, no AC.
Apparently not. Very bare bones. And the first website was simple too. Search bar, categories, a shopping cart. Functional, not fancy.
Getting the core job done. Hiring a small team, everyone working crazy hours, servers humming away in the garage.
And right from the start, that rule, customer first, always. Everything was about making it easy, trustworthy for the user.
Which was crucial back then. People were still nervous about buying things online.
Totally. So things like customer reviews, which seem obvious now, were a big deal. Detailed book info, a good search system, making it feel reliable.
Getting investors. That must have been tough. Skepticism about online shopping was high.
It was. He eventually raised about $1 million, mostly from family, friends, a few brave early investors who bought into the vision, not necessarily the immediate numbers.
And then, July 16th, 1995, Amazon.com goes live.
And the reaction was pretty immediate. Within the first month, sales in all 50 U.S. states and something like 45 other countries.
Wow. Orders just pouring in, exceeding all their forecasts. That bill must have been ringing off the hook.
Constantly. Which meant more computers, more staff, renting actual office space beyond the garage. Rapid scaling from day one.
But they weren't making money, right? They were reinvesting everything.
Exactly. Pouring it all back into growth. More books, better tech, faster shipping, playing the long game. Bezos kept saying, "We are not in a sprint, we are in a marathon." That was key. Profit wasn't the immediate goal. Market share and customer loyalty were.
And he was still personally involved in everything.
Deeply. Code, design, marketing, inventory, even packing boxes when needed in the early days. Still very hands-on.
And sticking to that frugal culture. No fancy offices.
Nope. Focus on simplicity, keep costs down. Then the media started picking up on it. The bookstore of the future. Customers loved the convenience.
But backlash came too. Traditional bookstores worried big companies.
Oh yeah, lots of doubters. People calling it another .com destined to fail. Lots of established players felt threatened.
But Bezos just kept hammering that message, customer value.
Unwavering. If you built value for the customer, the rest would follow. And that mantra he started using, it's still day one.
What did that really mean, day one?
It meant always acting like a startup. Hungry, nimble, humble, obsessively focused on the customer, never getting complacent or resting on past success. Keep that initial energy alive.
By the end of '96, 180,000 customers. That's serious traction.
It was, which set the stage for the IPO in 1997. Going public, stock opens at $18 a share.
Still skepticism, though.
Plenty, but also growing belief in the potential. It was split camp. But Bezos himself became a millionaire on paper, but apparently kept driving his old Honda, still working insane hours. The focus didn't shift.
And that message to the new public investors was pretty bold.
Very. We are not afraid to be misunderstood. We are going to take risks. We are going to invent. And we are going to think long term. Basically telling Wall Street, don't expect quick profits. We're building something huge here.
already signaling that Amazon was more than just books. It was a platform, a mission to change how the world buys, well, everything.
Right. After the IPO in '97, Amazon was known, sure, but as a bookstore. Jeff's vision, though, was always that everything store. Books were just step one.
But that growth brought huge challenges, right?
Hmm.
More customers, way more orders, complex problems popping up everywhere.
Absolutely. And sources really highlight Bezos' approach here. He didn't seem fazed by problems. He leaned into solving them. Initially, with books, it was about nailing the basics. Storage, shipping, keeping customers happy. Building strong systems with technology was key.
Hiring top engineers became critical then.
Crucial to make the site faster, smarter, easier to use. He knew the tech backbone had to be incredibly robust and user-friendly.
And his obsession with details. We hear about that a lot.
Yeah, things like how smoothly the clicks felt on the website, how fast pages loaded, making sure orders were accurate. He apparently took incorrect orders personally. That quote, "If there's one thing Amazon is about, it's obsession with the customer." That really drove everything.
Growth meant warehouses, though.
Yeah.
Fulfillment centers. That must have been chaotic at first.
Sources say it was. Just scaling up that physical logistics side was a massive undertaking. But again, technology was the answer. Barcode systems, better ways to label shelves, algorithms to track orders efficiently. He had immense faith in tech solving these physical world problems.
And all this time, pressure from the outside. Investors wanting profits, media scrutiny, competitors trying to copy them.
Constant pressure. But reports suggest Bezos maintained that calm exterior, kept repeating, "It's still day one," keeping everyone focused internally on the long-term mission.
Then, 1998, they start adding more stuff. Music, DVDs, electronics.
The everything store vision starting to take concrete shape. Each new category brought new headaches, different sizes, storage needs, return policies. But they just tried things, learned, iterated. Failure was seen as part of the process.
That famous line, "Your margin is my opportunity." Explain that strategy.
It meant he was willing to offer lower prices than competitors, even if it meant smaller profit margins for Amazon initially. The goal was to win customers with value, build loyalty, gain scale. He saw competitors' high margins as an opening for Amazon to undercut them.
Bold move. And introducing customer reviews. Publishers hated that, right?
He did. They didn't want negative reviews alongside their books. But Bezos insisted it helped customers make better choices, which built trust in Amazon. And he was right. Reviews became a hugely powerful feature.
Then came personalization, you might also like.
Revolutionary at the time, using data to tailor the experience, making the site feel like your store, not just a giant catalog. It enhanced shopping massively.
So by the end of '99, 17 million customers, selling toys, electronics, clothes, way beyond books.
Yeah, and Time magazine names him Person of the Year, the king of online shopping. But even then, he was focused on what was next.
And redefining the company itself.
Crucially, we're not a bookstore. We are a technology company that happens to sell books. That reframing was vital for their future direction, allowing them to move into things like cloud computing later.
But financially,
Yeah,
they were still burning cash.
big time. High costs from all that growth, warehouses, software, people. No profit for years. Critics were loud, predicting bankruptcy was inevitable.
Yet Bezos kept investing, doubling down on infrastructure and talent, taking huge risks.
Always with that long-term view. He said, if you are long-term oriented, customer interests and shareholder interests are aligned, believing that happy customers would eventually lead to a strong business.
What about his work style? Sources mentioned it was demanding.
Extremely. Asking hard questions, reading customer emails himself, pushing his teams relentlessly. Someone described working there as like being pushed into a fast river. You swim fast or you drown. High pressure, high expectations.
But it clearly fueled growth and change. Amazon just kept surprising people.
From that garage to a global force, built from scratch with that vision, discipline, and customer obsession. But yeah, the journey was far from over. More bumps were coming.
Right, because as we hit the early 2000s, Amazon's a big name, millions of users, looks like a success story.
But behind the scenes, yeah, the sources say there was still serious trouble. All that growth and investment hadn't translated into solid profit yet. People in the business world were genuinely asking, can this model actually survive? Is Bezos' strategy sound?
And then, smack bang in the middle of that uncertainty, 2000 happens.
The dot-com bubble bursts.
Explain that a bit. What exactly happened there?
Well, essentially, there'd been this huge, almost frantic investment in internet companies in the late 90s. Stock prices soared, often for companies that had cool ideas but no real revenue, let alone profit. It was built on hype as much as fundamentals.
A bubble waiting to pop.
Exactly. And when it popped, it was brutal. Companies went bankrupt overnight, investors lost fortunes, and suddenly everyone lost faith in online businesses. Anything with .com in its name was suspect.
And Amazon got hit hard.
Oh, yeah. Stock price crashed, lost something like 90% of its value. Headlines screamed, Amazon.bomb. Experts were confidently predicting its failure. It looked really bleak.
How did Bezos react to that?
Remarkably calm, according to the sources. He apparently told employees, this is not the end. This is the beginning of a stronger Amazon. Just refused to panic, kept focused on the long view.
But he had to make changes, right? You can't just ignore a 90% stock drop.
No, definitely not. Hard decisions were made. Layoffs, though, reportedly a relatively small percentage compared to others. Hiring slowed way down. Risky new projects were put on hold. The focus became ruthless efficiency.
Doing more with less.
That's exactly how one source put it. They had to get leaner, faster, smarter in every part of the operation: warehouses, shipping, customer service. The crisis forced them to optimize in ways they might not have otherwise.
But even while cutting costs, he was still thinking future.
That's the key takeaway. The belief was that great companies get built during the hard times. And it was during this period of sort of enforced focus that a truly game-changing question started bubbling up.
Which was?
What if all this technology infrastructure we've built for ourselves, what if we could rent it out to other businesses?
Ah, the light bulb moment for AWS.
Exactly. Amazon Web Services,
Yeah.
Cloud computing, offering servers, storage, computing power online on demand. It sounds commonplace now, but back then...
People must have thought he was crazy. A shopping site getting into enterprise IT infrastructure.
Total confusion initially. Why would they do that? It seemed completely random. But Bezos saw it differently.
How did he see it?
He saw cloud services becoming a basic utility like electricity. Something businesses needed, but didn't necessarily want to build themselves. He anticipated the massive shift away from companies owning their own data centers.
And AWS launched in 2006. Did it take off immediately?
Took a little while for the market to catch on, but then explosive growth. It became, and still is, incredibly profitable for Amazon. A huge part of their success and, frankly, the engine funding a lot of their other bets. It really proved his foresight.
Around the same time, another big move, Amazon Prime.
Yeah, launched around 2005, free 2-day shipping for a yearly fee. Again, people wondered if the math worked, but customers loved it. It created incredible loyalty. Bezos understood that speed and convenience were paramount.
And then Kindle in 2007, shaking up books again.
Right. Just when you thought Amazon was done disrupting publishing, An e-reader tightly integrated with the store. People were skeptical about giving up paper, but Kindle took off, transforming reading habits for millions.
So the dot-com crash forces efficiency, which leads to AWS. Then Prime and Kindle create new revenue streams and deeper customer loyalty. It really shows his approach to risk, doesn't it?
Absolutely. That quote, "Failure and invention are inseparable twins. If you're not failing, you're not inventing enough." He genuinely seemed to believe that.
Not afraid of being wrong, just afraid of standing still.
Precisely. And Amazon had failures. The sources mention the Fire Phone in 2014, a total disaster, lost millions. But even that was framed internally as a useful experiment. You learn, you move on.
Building a culture where it's okay to try big things, even if they don't pan out.
Exactly. Because some of those big bets like AWS, like Prime, like Kindle were transformative. That was the price of innovation. Some failures for massive successes.
And always that long-term thinking. It's still day one, even when things got really tough.
That mantra kept them grounded, hungry. So by the end of the 2000s, Amazon hadn't just survived the crash. It was arguably stronger, more diversified, and more powerful than ever. Millions shopping daily, thousands of businesses running on AWS.
Bezos himself evolving too, from founder to builder of systems, culture, the future.
Yeah, Amazon came out of that dot-com fire a different, much tougher beast, and ready for the next chapter, which, as we know, involved going even further beyond retail and eventually beyond Earth itself.
Yeah, let's talk about that core idea. Think long term. It really seems to be the thread connecting everything Bezos and Amazon did.
It absolutely is, and it's such a contrast to how most companies operate, right? Focused on the next quarter's results, the daily stock price.
Whereas Bezos, in his annual shareholder letters, consistently hammered this idea of focusing on long-term customer value, even if it meant sacrificing short-term profits.
And that wasn't just talk, it genuinely shaped everything. He understood deeply what customers fundamentally want: lower prices, faster delivery, more selection. And he believed those things wouldn't change much over time.
So invest relentlessly in those things, speed, scale, technology, rather than, say, raising prices or cutting service to make the next quarter look better.
Exactly. Which, for years, confused Wall Street. Amazon had huge sales, but where were the profits? People didn't get it initially.
But his perspective was different. Building loyalty, growing the market, riding the massive wave of online shopping.
Right. He famously said, "We are willing to be misunderstood for long periods of time." That takes real conviction, especially as a public company CEO.
And this long-term view applied to hiring, too.
Definitely. He wasn't just looking for skills. He wanted people who bought into the Amazon values, who could work fast, think big, handle the pressure. That quote, "I'd rather interview 50 people and not hire anyone than hire the wrong person fast," shows the emphasis on getting the right long-term fit.
Creating that high performance, maybe high pressure, but also inventive culture.
Yeah, and introducing things like the two-pizza rule.
Yes, explain that one.
The idea that meetings should be small enough that 2 pizzas could feed the entire group. It forced clearer goals, faster decision-making, less bureaucracy, keep teams small and add diesel.
And bringing back the regret minimization framework for big decisions.
Still using it himself, asking, "When I'm 80, will I regret not doing this?" Whether it was leaving Wall Street or launching a risky new venture.
And the famous ban on PowerPoint?
Yeah. Instead, meetings started with everyone silently reading a detailed 6-page memo for 20-30 minutes.
Why? What was the thinking there?
To force deep thinking and clarity from the person writing the memo and ensure everyone in the meeting had actually absorbed the information in context before discussion started. It improved decision-making, maintained intellectual discipline. No flashy slides, just substance.
So By the late 2000s, fueled by this long-term thinking, Amazon is just massive.
Hmm.
Millions of products, thousands of employees globally, Prime exploding, AWS thriving.
In launching more services, Amazon Music, Amazon Video, testing Amazon Fresh for groceries, adding layer after layer to that everything store concept.
But always anchored by that customer obsession.
Always. He said, we don't make money when we sell things. We make money when we help customers make better decisions. It's a subtle but important distinction. Focus on helping the customer, and the business success follows.
In telling investors, we don't work for Wall Street. We work for the customer, backing it up with actions.
Like launching Prime Day in 2015. Huge sales event just for Prime members. A massive logistical undertaking, definitely risky, but wildly successful in boosting Prime and sales.
Expanded the delivery network, experimenting with drones, Amazon Go stores with no cashiers.
Always pushing. When asked how they came up with ideas, he'd say something like, we are willing to plant seeds, let them grow, and be patient.
Long-term thinking is gardening almost.
Kind of, yeah. Plant lots of small ideas, nurture them, see which ones take root. Not every seed grows, but the ones that do can be transformative, like AWS or Prime.
Amazon becoming less like a store and more like an ecosystem.
Exactly. And Bezos leading it, often quietly, always thinking ahead, never forgetting day one. Even as it became a giant, he tried to maintain that startup energy. The journey, even then, felt like it was still just beginning.
Which leads us into how Amazon kept expanding beyond just selling stuff online. It became part of everyday life in so many ways.
Right. By the 2010s, Amazon wasn't just a website you visited. It was deeply integrated for many people. You trusted it, shipping was fast, returns were easy, Prime membership was booming, people were buying clothes, groceries, furniture, getting food delivery, far beyond those initial books and CDs.
Bezos saw it as much more than retail, didn't he? Technology, logistics, media.
Absolutely. And AWS just kept growing in the background, becoming even more crucial. It wasn't just startups using it anymore. Huge organizations like Netflix, Airbnb, even NASA and government agencies were running on Amazon's cloud.
The secret sauce, as he called it. Hugely profitable, funding all the new experiments.
Exactly. And then they moved seriously into entertainment with Amazon Studios, making original movies and TV shows, competing directly with Netflix, HBO.
Which seemed weird at first, right? The online bookstore making movies. But then they won an Oscar in 2017 for Manchester by the Sea.
Total surprise for many. But the strategy, again, linked back to the core business. Great original content would make Prime membership stickier, give people more reasons beyond just free shipping to sign up and stay.
Very clever. And then came Alexa.
Launched in 2014 with the Amazon Echo Seeker, a voice assistant you could talk to naturally. Alexa, what's the weather? Alexa, play music. Alexa, order more paper towels.
Again, initial skepticism. Who needs a talking speaker?
Plenty of it. But Alexa and Echo became massive hits. Millions of homes adopted them. It fundamentally changed how people interacted with technology, and crucially for Amazon, made shopping even easier, hands-free, voice-powered.
Bezos building the future again before most people even saw it coming.
And then pushing into the physical world in a huge way, buying Whole Foods Market in 2017.
$13.7 billion, their biggest purchase ever. Why groceries?
The vision seemed to be combining Amazon's tech and data prowess with Whole Foods' physical locations and brand reputation, changing how people buy groceries, maybe using the stores as delivery hubs, test beds for new tech, gaining access to prime real estate.
It all fits that pattern. Push limits, try new ways to serve customers, one-click ordering, drones, cashierless stores, always experimenting.
But not every experiment worked, as we mentioned. The Fire Phone in 2014 was a huge public failure, lost a ton of money.
How did Bezos talk about failures like that?
He was pretty open about it. If you're going to take bold bets, they're going to be experiments. And if they're experiments, you don't know ahead of time if they're going to work. He saw failure as necessary data collection.
And ironically, the hugely successful Amazon Echo launched the same year the Fire phone flopped.
Right. It perfectly illustrates their process. Try things. Some fail spectacularly, some succeed spectacularly. Keep trying until you create something people actually need or want.
That willingness to think big and take risks led Amazon into so many areas.
Right.
Healthcare with Amazon Pharmacy, building their own delivery network with planes and vans, AI everywhere with Alexa and AWS, even fashion with private labels.
By the late 2010s, Amazon wasn't just a store. It was an ecosystem where you could shop, watch, listen, read, even talk to your house.
And Bezos still pushing, still asking questions, still thinking about the next big thing. And his focus was starting to shift upwards.
Beyond Earth, yeah. To the stars. That childhood dream.
Right, the space dream, Blue Origin. This wasn't something he came up with after getting rich. The sources say this dream went way back, even before Amazon.
Yeah, reading science fiction as a kid, imagining humans living on other planets, that high school speech about space colonies. It was always there, the dream of building the future of space travel.
And unlike many childhood dreams, he actually pursued it once he had the resources. He started Blue Origin quietly back in 2000.
Very quietly. While Amazon was still growing like crazy, he was simultaneously launching this space company, The Mission, to build a future where millions of people can live and work in space.
Kept it under wraps for years, though, right?
Deliberately. He wanted time to experiment, learn, likely fail a few times without intense public scrutiny. Bought a huge tract of land in West Texas to build and test rockets.
The Blue Origin logo, the feather, what's the symbolism there?
Represents lightness, freedom, the power of flight. His vision wasn't just about getting to space, but doing it safely, affordably, and crucially, reusably. Rockets that could land vertically and fly again like airplanes, dramatically lowering the cost.
Which was a pretty radical idea back then.
Yeah.
Space was seen as the domain of governments, NASA, massive budgets.
A lot of skepticism, for sure. But Bezos had this long-term vision. He often said, Earth is the best planet, but we need to protect it. And to do that, we must go beyond it.
His idea about moving heavy industry off Earth, leaving Earth's zone for residential.
Yeah, creating orbiting space colonies powered by solar energy. Earth becomes this kind of beautiful home planet, while the dirty work happens off-world, a very grand, long-term vision.
So Blue Origin was progressing slowly, steadily, while Amazon was exploding publicly.
Testing small rockets, learning incrementally, some failures, some successes, mostly out of the spotlight. Then, in 2015, a huge milestone.
What was that?
They successfully launched a rocket, the New Shepard, into space and then landed the booster vertically back on Earth. First time it had been done with a booster returning from space. It proved the reusable concept was viable.
It must have been a massive moment for him.
Huge. He said, "We are now one step closer to a future where space is open to everyone." They unveiled the New Shepard rocket, named after Alan Shepard, the first American in space, designed specifically for space tourism.
Sending paying customers for short trips to space still sounded like science fiction to many.
It did, but they kept testing, refining, and then in 2021, the big one, the first crewed mission.
With Jeff Bezos himself on board.
Yep. Along with his brother Mark, Wally Funk, an 82-year-old aviation pioneer who'd been denied astronaut training decades earlier because she was a woman, and an 18-year-old Dutch student, Oliver Damon, whose father had bought the seat.
Quite a crew. July 20th, 2021.
Launched from West Texas, flew past the Kármán line, the accepted edge of space. Experienced a few minutes of zero gravity, saw the curve of the Earth, then the capsule landed safely under parachutes.
It's just an 11-minute flight, but hugely symbolic.
Absolutely. Marked a new chapter, the beginning of private commercial human spaceflight in that suborbital realm. Bezos landed and famously said, "Best day ever," and "We're just getting started."
So Blue Origin's mission isn't just space tourism.
No, that's just the first step, proving the technology and generating revenue. The larger goal is building the infrastructure, the road to space, as he calls it, for future generations. They're working on much larger rockets, like New Glenn, capable of reaching orbit, potential space stations, and even a lunar lander, Blue Moon, designed to help NASA return astronauts to the moon.
How does it compare to SpaceX, Elon Musk's company?
They're often compared, obviously, both private space companies driving innovation. Musk is very focused on Mars colonization. Bezos seems more focused on building the foundational infrastructure near Earth, cheaper, safer transport, utilizing space resources to enable millions to eventually live and work in space, preserving Earth in the process. Different visions, but both pushing the boundaries.
Bezos believes millions will live and work in space.
He seems genuinely convinced. Big things start small, he says. He's personally funding Blue Origin with billions, selling Amazon stock to do it. He's called it the most important work I'm doing.
And stepping down as Amazon CEO in 2021. That was partly to focus more on Blue Origin.
That was a major stated reason, yeah, to dedicate more time and energy to the space venture, which was really his original lifelong passion project.
From a kid watching the moon landing to building his own rockets and flying in one, it's quite the arc.
Proves no dream is too big, perhaps. For Bezos, clearly, the sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning.
Okay, so beyond Amazon the company, beyond Blue Origin, let's talk about Bezos the leader. His style, the principles, the legacy. By 2021, Amazon is undeniably one of the most powerful companies ever. Its impact is everywhere.
And his leadership style is a huge part of that story. What word comes up constantly in the sources to describe him?
Intense, relentless.
Exactly, relentless. Known for asking incredibly tough questions. Why are we doing this? Is this really helping the customer? Is there a better way? Pushing constantly.
The work environment at Amazon is often described as pretty demanding, right? Surviving a jungle, some sources say. High pressure, high expectations.
Definitely. But he also had frameworks for managing that intensity, like his distinction between type 1 and type 2 decisions.
Explain those.
Type 1 decisions are big, strategic, high stakes, hard to reverse, like betting on AWS or buying Whole Foods. Those require deep analysis, careful deliberation. Type 2 decisions are smaller, easily reversible if they don't work out, like testing a new website feature.
And his point was,
Don't treat type 2 decisions like type 1s. Make type 2 decisions quickly. Empower teams to experiment. If you can fix it easily later, don't overthink it now. Keep moving fast. That mindset was key to Amazon's speed and innovation.
and the principle, invent and simplify.
He lived that one, constantly looking at existing things, online shopping, cloud storage, voice interaction, and asking, how can we make this drastically easier, faster, better for the customer? Simplify the complex.
Like one-click ordering. Seems simple now, but it removed so much friction.
A perfect example of that obsession with simplifying the customer experience.
And think long-term, we've covered that, but it connects to the idea of flywheels.
Right. Building self-reinforcing systems. For Amazon retail, lower prices attract more customers. More customers attract more sellers, offering more selection. More selection and volume allow for lower costs and thus lower prices. The wheel spins faster and faster, powered by customer focus.
Viewing the whole business as a system designed around the customer.
Exactly. The most important single thing is to focus obsessively on the customer. Every major initiative, Prime, fast delivery, easy returns, reviews, all stemmed from that core belief.
So July 2021, he steps down as CEO, passes the reins to Andy Jassy, who built AWS.
But didn't step away entirely, became executive chairman, still involved in big decisions, just not the day-to-day grind.
Why step down then?
To focus on Blue Origin, as we said, also the Washington Post, which he bought, and his philanthropic work, the Bezos Earth Fund, committing $10 billion to fight climate change, and the Day One Fund for homelessness and education, spreading his focus.
So his legacy, it's obviously not just about being one of the richest people ever. It's the sheer reach.
Immense reach. Transforming commerce, cloud computing, reading, now pushing into space travel. His leadership style, bold, data-driven, relentlessly curious, is studied, emulated, debated.
Those principles, customer obsession, long-term thinking, invention, they're baked into business school curriculums now.
They are, but there are controversies too, right? Criticisms about the work culture, treatment of warehouse workers, Amazon's market dominance, antitrust concerns. That's part of the legacy too.
Definitely a complex picture.
No doubt. But even critics would acknowledge Jeff Bezos fundamentally changed the world we live in. He seemed to embrace being controversial, though. If you want to be understood all the time, don't do anything new.
From a garage bookstore to a global behemoth, launching rockets, it's an incredible story. For what are the core lessons, do you think?
Patience, maybe. Discipline. Courage to pursue those really big long-term dreams. And that constant reminder.
It's still day one.
Yeah.
Still evolving.
Always. The journey continues, even with him in a different role.
Let's wrap up with some reflections. Maybe look at a few key quotes that really capture his mindset.
Good idea. They often distill the essence. How about, your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room.
Right. That speaks directly to reputation, customer experience dictating your identity. It's not about marketing slogans. It's about what people genuinely feel.
We are stubborn on vision. We are flexible on details.
That's a great way. Having that clear, unwavering long-term goal, but being willing to adapt, pivot, change tactics along the way to get there, not getting locked into one specific path.
How about this one for innovation? If you double the number of experiments you do per year, you're going to double your inventiveness.
Yeah, treating innovation almost like a numbers game. More attempts, more learning, higher chance of breakthroughs. It ties into accepting failure.
And related. It's not an experiment if you know it's going to work.
Embracing the uncertainty, right? True invention means venturing into the unknown. If it's a sure thing, it's not really an experiment.
On people. I'd rather interview 50 people and not hire anyone than hire the wrong person.
Back to that long-term focus on quality, culture fit, not just filling a seat quickly.
And on dealing with skepticism. I believe you have to be willing to be misunderstood if you're going to innovate.
If you're doing something genuinely new, people might not get it at first. You have to have the conviction to push through that.
And maybe the most fundamental, what's dangerous is not to evolve.
Standing still is the real risk. Constant growth, adaptation, learning that survival, especially in tech.
So reflecting on him as a leader. Complex, definitely. Admired for the relentless drive, the vision, the results. Criticized for the demanding culture, the impact on workers.
Seems like he prioritized effectiveness over being liked. Challenging people, but also giving them ownership. That two-pizza rule fostering independence.
And that belief in failure as learning, it really did seem to encourage risk-taking, which fueled successes like AWS alongside flops like the Fire Phone. And the Blue Origin venture. It shows thinking beyond just the next quarter or even the next decade, thinking about humanity's future.
So, final thoughts. The man who changed the world. Maybe not single-handedly, but his influence is undeniable.
He built Amazon fundamentally to solve customer problems, make their lives easier, and achieved it through relentless innovation, bold bets, and that incredibly long-term, almost limitless vision.
Key lessons for anyone listening.
Think big and think really long-term. Obsess over your customer. Embrace experimentation. Don't fear failure. Build a team of high performers who share the vision. And never stop evolving. Keep learning. Keep adapting.
His impact through Amazon, Blue Origin, reshaping entire industries, it's profound whether you admire him or criticize him.
And even though he's not CEO anymore, that impact, that legacy continues to shape our world. He wasn't just a business builder. He created systems, cultures, and ways of thinking that will be studied and debated for a long time.
And fittingly, we end where he always urged his team to begin.
It's still day one.
So, quite a journey we've covered there. From that initial spark of curiosity, building Amazon literally from a garage, that unwavering long-term vision, the willingness to fail, expanding into everything from cloud computing to movies, and then reaching for space with Blue Origin, plus those core leadership ideas.
We tried to hit the highlights, pull out those aha moments from the sources without getting totally bogged down in every single detail. Hopefully gave you a good sense of the key threads.
Exactly. Now, here's something to maybe chew on, something we didn't explicitly dive deep into, but bubbles up from all this. With Amazon being so deeply embedded in commerce, data, cloud infrastructure, and Bezos now also heavily influencing space infrastructure. What are the deeper implications of that kind of concentrated, privately held power over the fundamental building blocks of future society, both digital and physical?
That's a big question. The potential benefits versus the potential risks of having so much critical infrastructure shaped by one company's or one individual's vision and priorities. Definitely something worth thinking about.
Yeah, food for thought. How might some of those principles, maybe regret minimization or the day one mindset or even stubbornness on vision, apply in your own world, your work, your own big goals?
Good question to reflect on.
Well, that wraps up this deep dive. We hope you found it useful, maybe sparked some new ideas or questions. There's always more to explore, of course.
Always more deep dives to come. Thanks for joining us.